Right. Let's just dive straight into this incredibly high-stakes explainer. Today, we're breaking down the great Xbox veto and how a sudden, frankly dramatic strategic pivot by Microsoft Gaming has completely rewritten the rules of engagement between the industry's absolute biggest titans. We're going to start right at the climax with a historic bombshell. Just picture this, okay? Sony's autumn State of Play broadcast is imminent. Millions of gamers are watching. Sony execs are geared up for what would essentially be the ultimate PR victory, the premiere trailer of Halo Campaign Evolved running natively on a PlayStation 5. For anyone who follows the gaming ecosystem, seeing Master Chief right next to a PlayStation logo is basically the psychological equivalent of Microsoft waving a giant white flag. But literally at the 11th hour, inside the executive suites over in Redmond, that trailer was unilaterally vetoed, and it sent absolute shockwaves through the entire global gaming industry. The sheer speed and honestly the panic of this veto was completely unprecedented. I mean, look at the timeline. 3 weeks prior, the ink is dry and high bitrate video assets are securely sitting on Sony's servers. But then, a mere 72 hours before the broadcast, Microsoft's brand new Xbox CEO Asha Sharma calls an emergency board meeting with Satya Nadella and orders an immediate full halt. Fast forward to just 24 hours before the show, and Microsoft's legal team triggers an emergency exit clause, completely yanking the trailer. Can you even imagine the frantic Zoom calls over at Sony headquarters trying to restructure their showcase at the last possible second? So, what actually caused this? Well, that brings us to our first major section, the catalyst. Specifically, Asha Sharma's business reset. To understand the why behind this dramatic exit, we really need to look at this stark contrast in leadership. For years, we've lived in the Phil Spencer era, right? If you follow Xbox, you know the vibe. Highly curated, gamer first, the casual graphic tees, and this decentralized play anywhere doctrine that actually resulted in Xbox titles hitting the PlayStation Store. But following those massive multi-billion-dollar buyouts of Bethesda and Activision Blizzard, the division got incredibly bloated. Enter Asha Sharma. Directly appointed by Satya Nadella to rescue the division, she is totally different. She's rigorous, heavily data-driven, and brings this ruthless mandate of consolidation and an exclusive focus on their own hardware. Now, the inciting incident that actually triggered Sharma's drastic action was a massive, blaring financial red flag. Imagine opening up the company books and staring at a staggering $480 million drop in console hardware revenue over just 5 years. Xbox hardware sales in Europe and Asia weren't just slipping a bit, they were literally in free fall. The trend here is just undeniable. We're looking at a year-over-year nosedive, from $3.2 billion in 2024 down to $2.8 billion in 2025, and an incredibly alarming projection of just $2.3 billion for 2026. Seeing those numbers, it justifies exactly why Sharma slammed on the emergency brake. Letting their most sacred IP, Halo, be weaponized to help sell rival consoles would have pretty much been the final nail in the Xbox hardware coffin. Her mandate was captured perfectly in this leaked internal business reset memo. She officially declared an end to the era of blank checks and unbridled expansion for all these subsidiary studios. The message was crystal clear: consolidation, intelligent downsizing, and a hyper-focus on sustainable profitability. Basically, absolutely no more overlapping projects with ballooning budgets and zero economic justification. But pivoting a corporate ship of this size doesn't happen without some serious collateral damage. This brings us to Section 2, the casualties. Specifically, the human toll and canceled ports. Because this aggressive reset comes with a really devastating human cost. Leaked documentation indicates Microsoft is gearing up for a massive wave of layoffs slated for mid-July of 2026. We're looking at an estimated 1,500 employees who are expected to be let go. And this isn't just trimming marketing staff. This reportedly cuts deep into core development teams, potentially including the complete shuttering of several underperforming studios. It's a really harsh, sobering reality for the people actually building the games we play. And then there's the software collateral damage, where the new strategy becomes blatantly clear. Halo's PS5 port, suspended indefinitely. Doom remains unchanged, mostly just to honor existing legal contracts, while Indiana Jones is currently under strategic review. But you've got to look at that second item, the complete and total cancellation of the highly anticipated PlayStation 5 port of Gears of War E-Day. The developers over at the Coalition had reportedly already spent months adapting that codebase for Sony, and the plug was just unceremoniously pulled. Which naturally leads us into our next section, the strategy, or what we're calling the technical superiority play. So let's dig into why canceling that specific Gears of War port was viewed internally as a necessary technical sacrifice. It fundamentally comes down to technical optimization. You see, developing a game for multiple platforms inherently requires cross-platform parity compromises. You essentially have to design your game for the lowest common denominator, right? Well, Sharma ordered the coalition to completely abandon the PS5 port so they could focus 100% of their resources on leveraging the bespoke Xbox Velocity architecture. She essentially wants them to push Unreal Engine 5 to graphical limits that simply cannot be replicated on any other machine. Make no mistake, this is a pure hardware power play. By keeping incredibly demanding titles locked exclusively to the 12 teraflop Xbox Series X, rather than scaling down for the 10.28 teraflop PS5, Microsoft is essentially turning its games into uncompromised, mandatory tech demos. They are totally unchaining their developers, telling them to push ray tracing, volumetric lighting, and advanced asset streaming to absolutely unprecedented levels, all just to definitively prove their raw hardware superiority. However, making a move like this triggers our next focus area, the high-stakes financial gamble. While hardcore Xbox loyalists are obviously thrilled by this return to hardware pride, from a macroeconomic perspective, withholding these blockbuster titles has pushed Wall Street into a state of sheer panic. Consider the massive scale of the goldmine Microsoft is just actively choosing to ignore right now, an entirely untapped base of 60 million PlayStation 5 owners. Keep in mind, developing a top-tier AAA game today runs a staggering $200 to $350 million. So by locking out 60 million potential buyers, Microsoft is drastically shifting a massive financial burden entirely onto Game Pass. Despite the obvious risks, the case for exclusivity here is incredibly compelling. Think of it as a calculated maneuver to fiercely reignite community brand loyalty after what has arguably been years of erratic, confusing messaging. It acts as a critical catalyst for hardware sales as we gear up for the next console generation. Plus, it ensures subscribers feel their Game Pass investment is actually paying for truly premium, gated content that you can't get anywhere else. Conversely, the severe downsides are exactly why Microsoft gaming investors are sweating right now. The company is having to navigate massive, multi-billion-dollar short-term liquidity deficits by just forfeiting that PS5 software revenue entirely. Add in the brutal workforce reductions we mentioned earlier to artificially balance the books, and you got a tough situation. And finally, of course, it creates highly volatile diplomatic fallout with Sony, which heavily jeopardizes pretty much any future cross-industry collaborations. So, what does all of this mean for the future of the gaming landscape? Let's move into our final section, the future and the next console war. This 11th hour veto ultimately proves one thing for sure. The era of diplomatic truces and friendly corporate smiles between these two gaming titans, it is definitively over. Microsoft is willingly enduring severe short-term agony, accepting massive deficits, plummeting stock valuations, and incredibly painful restructuring, all to relentlessly arm their brand and resuscitate the hardware soul of Xbox. They're drawing a massive line in the sand to prepare for the ultimate showdown in the 10th console generation. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with the ultimate existential question. As this corporate Cold War turns bloody, will consumers actually reward Microsoft's massive technical gamble by investing in their upcoming hardware? Or will Sony, heavily armed with its relentless armada of narrative-driven exclusives, just conquer the battlefield permanently? Only time will tell. But honestly, one thing is for certain. The real console war has only just begun.